Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's live lesson. Today, we're going to be continuing looking at how to improve your marks on paper 1 in your progression test or even your final exam. Okay, we started looking at it last week, but we didn't quite finish. So for those who weren't here last time, we're going to take a quick look at what we did, and then we'll go on to something a little bit newer. Right, things are looking good this week. Right, if you remember last time, the paper 1 is going to begin with a comprehension. In this case, it was about dolphins, okay? The dolphins, and we discovered there were a couple of questions about the passage in question 1, which you should have been able to answer. Then we went on to a vocabulary question. There's always going to be a vocabulary question, which is generally give the meaning of each of the words as they are used in the passage. For example, about a musical score, and they asked you what is a score, and somebody gave the answer, it is when someone scores a goal. So they weren't quite sure that a score meant music for a movie. Okay, so you must look back at the word and see what it means in the passage. Okay, so we looked at that and we discovered follow the instructions. In each case, give one word or short phrase. Some people put the whole sentence in there. You're going to get 0. That means you want the examiner to pick out the right words. That's not going to happen. And if you put several words, same story. You're supposed to be choosing the word, not anyone else. And that's how you're going to get your marks. You see, 1 mark for each of those points. Then always, there's always going to be punctuation. So if you're not sure about your punctuation, please revise it. Look and see. Sentences actually begin with a capital letter. There's going and end with a full stop or a question mark or an exclamation mark. If there's going to be a list within that little passage there, you have to know about colons and semicolons. You need to know about dialogue punctuation. If you're not sure of any of those, try to revise it or just send me a message and I will help you do that. Okay, I can send you information on all these things. Right, here's another favorite you're always going to get. Rewrite a sentence adding some type of relative clause. Okay, with information from the passage. Okay, so what is a relative clause? A relative clause contains a subject and a verb, and most importantly, begins with a relative pronoun. Who, whom, whose, that, or which. Or sometimes a relative adverb, when, where, or why, depending on the meaning of the sentence. Now, I have seen questions that say very sneakily, rewrite the sentence, adding a relative clause and putting a relative pronoun or a conjunction or something at the beginning of the sentence. Some people somehow blank out, their eyes go blind, and they don't see that instruction that says put it at the very beginning of your sentence. If you don't know about that, then you are in trouble. So if you can't follow instructions, whoa, they're not going to be kind to you. Right, here's another favorite. Combine 3 sentences into 1. It could be 2 sentences. And they tell you, do not use and or but. Why? Because usually if you use and or but, you're going to write a compound sentence. A compound sentence is when you're joining 2 sentences together. Okay, in this case, we're looking at a complex sentence, which has some clauses. It could be an if clause, it could be anything. So basically, you have to add in all your connectors, signposting words, that sort of thing. And the sentence must make sense. You can't just write dolphins live naturally in both rivers and oceans, comma, they are intelligent and playful, comma, many dolphins are trained in captivity, because that sentence would just not make sense. So you've got to sense check it, as well as make sure you get in whatever connectors, etc. they are asking for. Again, it's about following those instructions. Okay, we've joined it with although dolphins live naturally, many are trained in captivity because they are. There's not only one answer to this. There can be several answers. It all depends which connector you would use. Okay, so the answer becomes subjective, and that means there can be several answers which are all correct. Okay. Right, let me just make a note of that. Somebody wants info on something, I'm not sure what. Right, complete this sentence using two different forms of the same verb. Some people don't notice the word same verb, and they just put any old verbs they like. This is usually to do with a verb tense. So you need to know, can you use present tense, past tense, conditional tense, present perfect tense, or is it future tense? If you know what all these mean, you will be fine, because it's all about using the same verb. Okay. Oh yes, and here was our punctuation. Opening inverted commas, capital letters, question mark, close inverted commas. Remember, all punctuation is inside the inverted commas or speech marks, whatever you want to call them. Okay, somebody sent me one the other day. They had a question mark, then they put a comma, which of course you can't have two punctuation marks. You need to decide which one is it. Okay, again, if it's a new sentence, capital letter, comma before you start, open inverted commas. Make sure you use the apostrophe if it's needed, comma to close it, close inverted commas. She said, full stop, capital letter, open inverted commas. They are certainly intelligent, comma, friendly and playful, full stop, close inverted commas. So you see how many marks that are included in this. There must be about 12 things you need to know just for those little sentences. So make sure punctuation, you're very careful with it, particularly dialogue punctuation. They always ask that one. Right. Now, we started looking at this last week, but we ran out of time. So we're going to look at it again. And I'm afraid I'm going to be reading it to you. So pay attention for those that can't see the screen very well. Okay. There are more than 30 species of dolphin. Most live in oceans across the world, but there are also 6 species of dolphin which live in fresh water. These are found in rivers in Brazil, China, Colombia, India, Nepal, and Pakistan. Dolphins are generally social animals, sometimes living in groups or pods of several hundred. What a sight that would be to see. A number of dolphin species are classified as critically endangered, and more are known to be in serious danger, but have yet to be formally assessed. In other words, we don't really know how many. One of the greatest threats to dolphins is getting caught up in fishing nets, which can cause them to drown. This causes the deaths of more than 300,000 cetaceans, i.e. dolphins, porpoises, and whales every year. That's a lot of ones to die. The reduction of the dolphin's prey as a result of unsustainable commercial fishing is another reason for its decline. Note the difference between dolphins' prey, the food that they eat, as compared to the verb pray, speaking to your God of some kind, okay? Right, in order to communicate, dolphins produce clicking sounds and then receive and interpret the returning echoes. in a process known as echolocation. From this, they can tell the size, shape, distance, speed, and direction of the objects, especially their favorite food of fish and squid. The noise from naval operations and seismic surveys affects their echolocation, which can then cause them to become stranded on shore. Being struck by ships and other sea vessels can also cause serious and even fatal injuries to dolphins. Freshwater dolphins are vulnerable to human activities. They can be threatened by chemical pollution in rivers, lakes, and estuaries. They are also at risk from man-made structures such as dams and barrages, which restrict their movement and affect their access to prey and suitable habitat. Okay, remember a barrage, there's a very big one that protects London. It's like a huge barrier that can rise up when there's a flood and supposedly will keep the water out. Okay, so both man-made structures, dams, and barrages. Okay, I know we've only read it once, but as I say, time is a bit short. Now, what they've asked you to do is read this extract and answer the questions. Now, this is going to be a summary, but read your instructions again. A, make a list of all the dangers to ocean and river dolphins and the results of these dangers. Now, first of all, you should look and see how many points is this worth? 4. And keeping in mind that Cambridge doesn't give you half-point marks, you should possibly be looking about 6 to 8 things, because look, they've got a dot, like a list thing to show you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you've got to read the passage again very carefully and list the dangers and the results of these dangers. That's all you need to do. So try to read it a couple of times, and then here is a list that we've put already. Getting caught in fishing nets causes dolphins to drown. Here's what happens, and this is the result. So it's basically like a cause and result. Unsustainable commercial fishing, too much of it, big huge nets, reduces dolphins' prey. It leaves them with nothing if human beings take it all. Noise from naval operations and seismic surveys or activities affects their echolocation, which is very important to them. And that makes them become stranded on the shore. Okay, and then they're just totally lost. They don't know which way they should be going. Being struck by ships and other vessels, maybe submarines, who knows what, something unexpected that the dolphin's not sure about. It causes serious injuries that they might never recover from, and fatal injuries. Then they're goners. Human activities like chemical pollution in rivers, lakes, estuaries can be fatal. Those chemicals are toxic and they're going to poison them and kill them. Risk from man-made structures, as we said, like dams and barrages. This restricts their movement. They can only go so far. They can't maybe go at certain speeds because of this man-made structure. And again, it affects their access to prey and even their suitable habitat, their environment that they live in. If they get stuck in a dam or an estuary or beside a barrage, how could they get out? So then they're not going to get any food and they will die. Okay, so you do that first and you put as much information that they've asked you for into this little summary here. And then what do they ask you? Using the list that you have made, write a summary of 80 to 100 words. Okay, you must take care to do that. If it's too little, you'll lose marks. If it's too many, you will lose marks. to explain some of the dangers to dolphins and the results of these dangers. So it's very similar to what you've done. Then it says, use your own words as much as possible. Sometimes it's not possible to use different words. I mean, we can't use a different word for a dolphin, for example, or a dam or a barrage. Okay, so what you now need to do to get your points is you only concentrate on what you've written here, the causes and the results. What you should try to do is there any words that you can try and use some synonyms for? Okay, synonyms, words that mean the same as, or sometimes you could even use an antonym to explain something using the opposite word, but putting it into a positive light. So it depends what you're thinking about. So you use this and only this. You don't need to look back at the passage at all. This is going to be your Bible almost, because that's what you're only going to be looking at. Okay? So once you know that thoroughly, you should think, what is all this about? What's it all about? Because then you can have a sentence either at the beginning to talk about the whole thing, or your final concluding sentence, which is even better, to put it there. Okay, so you've really, really got to understand this. And now here we've written a summary. Let's take a look at these notes here. Note that a summary should be a short, easy to read version of the passage. We're bringing it down to its simplest elements to contain the main points of the original, but should be written in your own words where possible. Do not copy out chunks of the original. If you do that, as we said, it's plagiarism, because you're using someone else's words. You've stolen them, so you cannot do that. So even just trying to paraphrase what they've said, turn it around the other way, that sort of thing, put the active into the passive, then you've changed it, okay? And when you write your summary, it's still got to be using the correct grammar, punctuation, and correct sentences, because people tend to do run-on sentences, which aren't real sentences, sentence fragments, all that, you'll lose your marks, and you need as many marks as you can. Okay, let's look briefly at what we've written for the summary. Human activities pose the most dangerous threat to dolphins. Ships strike many dolphins accidentally, and this causes serious or even fatal injuries. Not only can they get caught up in fishing nets and drown, but overfishing also leaves dolphins with no food to catch. The dolphin's echolocation is disturbed by certain naval operations. Further, it's also messed up by earthquake events. That upsets them. This causes them to be marooned on beaches as their sense of direction is muddled. Freshwater dolphins suffer mainly from human pollution, which destroys their habitat. Even dams or barrages can impede their ability to travel through the water to chase after their food supply. Okay, so that is really a summary of what you have written here. It's been written slightly differently, trying to use synonyms where possible, and putting things in a different order. I hope you can see how one relates to the other. Okay. Usually, if we're doing Q&As, we look at things like summaries and the bits of grammar that come up in these progression tests and exams, and that's the only way to try to learn it and to learn more about things. Right, and then the very last question, as usual, on paper 1 is going to be writing an essay. Okay, and the first thing you need to do when writing an essay is analyze the question. Make sure you know exactly what you're going to do before you do it. As mentioned previously, if you take time to plan, you're going to be able to write so much better, and quickly. So if you take 10 minutes to do this, it doesn't matter. You're not going to run out of time. Let's see what this question asks you. Write an article for a magazine called Living Earth about the harm that pollution is causing the planet. Okay, you could include the following in your article: different sorts of pollution, air, water, litter, etc., causes and effects of different sorts of pollution, like we did with the summary with the dolphins, ways to raise awareness of the harm. How would you raise awareness? So let's look at that carefully. Write an article. So in other words, we're looking at informative writing. We're going to inform people, we're giving them information. Okay, so we're going to be using formal language. Okay. The magazine called Living Earth. So that must be for fairly affluent people who can afford to buy magazines. Okay. What else? And again, here's your information that needs to be done. Harm that pollution is causing the planet. Okay, so what would you write in an article? You would need things like a stand first. Well, that's after you decide on a title, of course. There must be a title. Then you're going to have a stand first, which is really just like a little factual summary of what you're going to be writing. Then you're going to need some middle paragraphs, probably with subheadings, because that makes it easier for people to write. Then perhaps direct speech for someone to talk about whatever you're writing about. And then your last paragraph will bring things to a conclusion. Right, so this is looking at an essay plan about your informative article. Okay, and the first thing you need to look at is the title. What should it be called? What should it be called? Maybe pollution kills. Maybe reduce, recycle, reuse. Maybe man the destroyer. You must always have a title or you will lose a mark. So make sure you've done that first of all. You might have to change it once you've written everything, but at least you've got a proposed title that you can think about now. Okay. Right, let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. Yes, we can. Right, we were supposed to be looking at things like air pollution, water pollution, and maybe land pollution. So you try and jot down all the facts you can think of that you've read, that you know about. So air pollution, maybe toxic fumes from vehicles, factories, industrial smoke, fossil fuels, hole in the ozone layer. So that's some notes on your air pollution. What about water pollution? Ships, oil spillages, sewage going directly into the sea, overfishing, islands of trash all over the ocean. Some of the things: land pollution, toxic chemicals from landfills where all the rubbish and trash goes from millions of people all over the globe. And these toxic chemicals leach into the water table. Plastics everywhere, which is never going to degrade. And forests that covered 60% of the planet now only cover 10% and are getting cut down day by day. And trees are the only thing that stop the carbon dioxide, isn't it? Right, so there's some of the items you can look about. It says, what's harmful? That was the harmful things. Now, they ask you about the effects of those. So make some notes underneath on the effects. Too much carbon dioxide raises the temperature, causes global warming. Smog causes asthma and other respiratory diseases. Even indoor air pollution nowadays is more polluted than outside because of all the chemicals we're using. Cleaning products, paints, carpets, computers, fridges, personal care products, etc. We're just surrounded by chemicals nowadays. And they said the hole in the ozone layer is slowly closing, but it does take 50 years to close if everyone doesn't make more pollution in the meanwhile. So that's quite a lot you can write about air pollution. Remember, you should be putting 3 examples. The rule of 3. Water pollution, you probably know these facts because you've heard about them so often. Only 3% of Earth's water is drinkable. The rest is salt water. 70 to 90% of this 3% is used in agriculture, which is for growing crops and for animals. The toxins in the water, like the sewage, is killing off fish and other sea life. Beaches are polluted. Dead animals at polluted water holes because of the chemicals in there. So water is very important, and we all need clean drinking water. And the third thing we looked at was land pollution. There's litter everywhere, toxic waste from mining, the arsenic in the water used to clean gold goes into real water table. Fracking, is that good or bad? Another item altogether. The rainforests, which help regulate temperature and weather patterns, covers 6% of the Earth's surface, but they actually have 50% of all animal and plant species there. So guess what? There's not going to be that many left. 1 tree provides enough oxygen for 3 people to breathe. Trees give off oxygen, which protects the world from global warming. So the less trees there are, the more trouble we're in. Right, another part was ways to raise awareness, looking at films, documentaries, websites, school cleanups, recycling charities, groups like Extinction Rebellion that we've heard a lot about recently in the press, the other green parties. Again, it's all to do with politics. One final thing, sorry, we're about to run out of time, promotion of recycling. So you could write something about all that, promotion of recycling. And finally, on your plan, you write down words, useful vocabulary that you might use, signposting words that you may or may not use, figures of speech that you may or may not use, because this will all add into your article that you're going to write for this magazine. Okay, right. Now, unfortunately, I think as always, we're running out of time. So if you have any questions or queries on this, you can write to me, send me a message, and I will get back to you. All right. Thanks for coming in, everyone, and hopefully see you next time. Bye.